Okay, so the next thing we're going to try and create is the nuts and bolts that sit on top of this. So we're going to have 4 going around this circle area here. So the first thing we're going to do is add some cuts, just so we know where we want them to go. So I think they'll sit around here, and we'll add another loop at the top and bottom here. So now they'll sit in this area here. So one way to kind of approach this, actually, just to make sure you get a proper circle, is to create a circle shape that sits kind of around there, and we'll make sure that's actually sat in front of our model, and then first of all try cutting it into this basic shape, and if that doesn't work, we will cut it into the more detailed version. I'm going to go for 5 points on this because we know this move will add points to it as well. So what I might need to do is cut these in. Remember, this might be a step that we go back to our original model for again. So try and make sure everything's still a set of a set of 4 vertices. There we go. Not far off there. Okay, so next we select our shape, extrude that in, now we're starting to see a reasonable result. The next thing we need to do is add some actual swift loops. Sometimes obviously that system doesn't work, I think it's because we're in orthographic mode. So we'll just come out of orthographic mode using P on the keyboard. Alright, it might be because let's turn it on there. Okay, still not liking it. Yeah, actually, that will do us. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. We'll probably get away with that, to be fair. It's worth checking just to see how near it is to the actual circle, and yeah, that's pretty good. Obviously now again we have the issue with, do we recut that back in, or do we merely kind of clone it round as we did before? I think the best option here is going to be to clone it round as is. So we'll make our selection is going to be a bit harder, but still going to be a lot easier than actually cutting that sphere in on each, cutting that circle in on each section. Now obviously I'm selecting like this, but you do have all your other selection tools up here that some people find useful, like the spray. And obviously something I always say is select via minus off selection rather than just adding to, as that can be a lot easier as well. It's a lot easier to minus a selection off than to add to it. Let's go back to the normal mode. Let's remove these. Okay, so that looks about right. Obviously you can actually just save yourself a hell of a lot of time here just by not kind of welding everything together as I did before. It's just a kind of one of these horrible habits that I've got into, but really if you can just leave it and forget it, you know, and and just weld everything at the end, and you'll actually be saving yourself a lot of time and effort, as I'm clearly showing you here. It'd be much better if we had just stuck with our original object with the smooth on it. Okay, so with our selection done, we can now detach that. Move that over there. Tools, array. Okay, on that. Check around the model, make sure there's no obvious issues or any small issues that you haven't picked up on. Convert them all to poly. We'll just delete that because we don't need that anymore. And then make sure there's nothing else in your scene and just attach all these. Remember to weld at 0.1 and apply the turbo smooth. So as you can see again, I've caused myself another issue here because of these here. And we'll just delete all that. The reason why that issue is happening is because I have edge mode still on here. It's a classic one that gets me a fair few times. I'll just put that to none, and then if I go to scale and just scale in, that'll work fine. Remember to do it about there, and scale in again and just weld all those together. And with any luck we'll now have completed area. And actually, just for the sake of that smooth, I'm just going to add another swift loop here. I think it'll look better with that. Brilliant, okay. Cool, so you can see that actually just kind of maintaining a stack as we would have done, as I should have done before, would have made this much easier rather than me having to redo everything. The only issue would be I wouldn't have those bits welded together, so aesthetically it wouldn't have looked quite right until I'd finalised it. But to be honest, my job then would have been much faster. Okay, so the next thing we're going to model is the bolts to actually sit in there. So we're just going to change the colour of that to a grey just to make it look a bit more like how it would actually look. So what we want to do now is we'll go back to our 4 views, hide that, and the first thing we want to do is make a cylinder that will sit in this area here. Okay, so make sure it'll actually fit in there. Now obviously your size of cylinder will be like that, but if you just bring them down to 5 or possibly 6, and then raise that out slightly, so it's about there, and check it in your proper perspective view as well. That probably sticks out far enough. Okay, so we have our initial kind of shape to work with for our bolts. Next thing we're going to do is create a sphere that sits over the front of the bolt, like so. And what you want to do with this is turn on, pull in the hemisphere setting here to around there, and then use scale just to flatten it down so it sits on it like that. There you go, that should do it. Now with this model we need some smoothing on this, so add an edit poly to it here, and then put a turbo smooth on top so we can see what it looks like straight away. And in edit poly, come to swift loop, add one at the top, one at the bottom, and you'll want one on the top area and one on the bottom area. And then you need to just do chamfer each of these. Call their loop as well, so that's good. So if we ring that, and then hit loop, we should be able to now just chamfer that. Obviously not that much. There we go. And there's our smoothed bolt. Then with this we'll just increase the size to 32 as well to get our final result. Okay, so there's our bolt now, and that can just sit on top of there. We'll group that together, all that bolt, and then you can just clone that round and slot that into each one there. You might as well make it an instant, so if you change one it will change the others. and also it's pretty cool just to put some slight kind of rotation on them too, just to create some variety. Okay. Okay, there we go. There we go. We have some more detail now in that. Okay, so if we now look at the current progress of our model, you'll notice that the one area that's kind of now lacking detail is the actual tyre. Now this is the point where we can actually go back to our original model where we still got all the different components, and we can actually look at using Turbo Smooth on this as well. So the first thing we'll do is just select the one we want to work on. And we'll turn off the bend on it. Go down to Edit Poly, and we'll just add Turbo Smooth on top there just to see what it would look like. See, at the moment we're lacking lots of definition here, so we need to get in a lot more cuts. We can try just using smoothing groups, but that isn't going to give us the detail we need either, so we'll need to add in some extra cuts here. So going on to Swift Loop, we'll need a cut there and a cut there, so either side, and then we'll need cut here, cut here, and then for each one of these we're going to need a cut at the top and bottom as well, so let's have a look at that. So remember, top and bottom of each of these. Okay, that's not looking too bad. Let's examine this area here. If we want to make this more defined, we could add a cut there and a cut there. Make sure we do the same on the other side, because I should have really used the symmetry to my advantage here, which I haven't. Okay, so we might just add in a couple more kind of minor details as well. So I'm thinking we've got a line here, we might as well use it. So let's add another one in there, one there, one there, and one there. And then we'll use these and just bevel those in. So in fact we'll leave that side blank because we're only really going to see this side anyway. Okay, so let's smooth that off, and we can see we need more lines, cuts in here. Let's have a look at that now. We still need some either side here. Okay, it's looking much better. Okay, so there's our kind of new and improved wheel. Let's reactivate the bend. And that to me is looking much better, a lot more interesting. To be honest, I don't like the fact I haven't done that outside. The only reason I didn't do it is because I forgot to use the symmetry one. So let's fix that. So we'll bin the bend, keep the turbo smooth, come down to edit poly here. In our top view I'm going to delete that area there. And then apply another symmetry modifier. There we go, that's better. Now we've got the model as I originally kind of wanted it. It's just a bit of a lack of thought on my part there. Should have used this edit poly first instead of the one that already had the symmetry applied. Okay, so now we can delete those. Go to snap mode, do as we did before, remember to 20 with instance turned on. Select them all, apply a bend modifier. We had -90, obviously 360 degrees, I think X. Oh, there we go, y-axis. Okay, so that's our new tyre model. Quite a lot more detail than the last one. Let's turn off snap. We'll pull this up to here. Shrink it down a little bit so it's the same size as the our old one. You can always kind of refine this in a bit anyway, but let's move it over here. Now what we need to do is just convert all these, well, remember to clone it, copy, remember to convert all this to editable poly. Use isolation mode and attach all of those together. And then use weld. In fact, I'm going to undo that. So I'm getting to the end of the tutorial now, so I'm getting a bit lackluster. I'm going to come onto here, we'll move the turbo, bin the turbo smooth, keep the bend, and we'll apply the turbo smooth once we've attached everything together. So isolation mode, which is Alt Q, select one of the models, attach them all together in isolation mode, and then remember to move the model to 0, 0, 0. We'll do the same. I forgot to center the pivot first. And there we go. Okay, we need to weld all the verts. 0.1. Then we select these two loops and remember to just pull them down as our old one. Move that over there. And we just pull those down. Fair enough. Remember to scale those down using just these two axes so that they don't go inwards either. Okay, so we're getting there. And then if we just swift loop along there, swift loop along there, and scale inwards. Apply the turbo smooth. And we need to scale this out a little bit. And then the last couple of things I'm going to do are add another couple of loops here, ring, and then I'm going to bevel that inwards. So, just to get that nice extra ridge on there. Okay, and there we have it. Let's make this a slightly better colour. Got the more detailed tyre. And our final poly count for our wheel is 23,000, which isn't bad. And obviously we still need to model the kind of interior brake disc as well. But obviously you can be a bit less kind of detailed on that because most of the time it will be kind of obscured by lighting, etc. Okay, so that's the end of the wheel modelling tutorial.